Seizure alert dog, and I've had epilepsy for 8 years now, and I'm wanting to go into the medical side of it with becoming an EEG technician, and this guy gets to go everywhere with me. So we have, let's see, up now are 2 proven industry leaders in service and seizure dog training. They have several trained animals walking the expo with their owners today. Katie Gonzalez, a little angel service dogs, and Michelle Ashley, domestic pups. So all those guys are going to be talking to you.
I know everyone's just interested in the puppy, so I'll introduce the puppy first. This is Rosie. Mary's from Domestic Pups, and Rosie is a service dog in training with our organization. And you can come by and say hi to her sometime during the expo or tomorrow at Disney. My name is Katie. I'm from Little Angel Service Dogs. So we are 2 different organizations in completely different places, and we're helping people that are struggling through the same thing, which is epilepsy. And we're up here today to explain how dogs are able to do all these fantastic things. It's like science fiction or magic, how these dogs are able to detect the different things that are going on inside of our brains that sometimes an EEG can't even tell us about. You can have a scalp EEG, you can have an intracranial EEG, which is very invasive, but the dogs know. And it's just amazing. So really what we want to do as trainers is we want to be able to hone in on that skill that this dog has that we could never dream of having and that medical technology can't even grasp. And we need to communicate to the dog in a way that's going to be consistent with a lot of repetition, and before long the dog understands what we're trying to communicate to them, and then they can communicate to us in a way that is going to change our lives and make our lives so much easier. A service dog definitely isn't for everyone. They take a lot of care. It's like having another family member come into your house, but you have to be totally consistent with them. Where with our kids, we say, we're going to be consistent, but they still manipulate us. You can't let a dog do that because we're relying on them, almost like a medical technology, to tell us all of these things are really important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be explaining how dogs are able to alert to seizures, and then Mary's going to go on to explain how dogs are able to perform different tasks to assist during the seizure and after the seizure. So for forever, animals that have a really good sense of smell have been able to tell their owners that they are about to have a seizure. That's a seizure alert dog. And ideally, everyone would like to have a dog that tells them in advance that they're going to have a seizure because they can prepare for it. They can put on a helmet or a mouth brace or go lay down or call someone, take some medication to prevent it from coming to fruition and breaking through. So obviously everybody wants that. And there's some discussion on the fact that some dogs can do it and some dogs can't. Really what's happening is that there's a difference in the brain, and different people have different types of seizures, and they present in different ways. When a dog is able to detect a seizure in advance, it's because there's seizure activity happening in the brain before the breakthrough seizure happens. So the seizure has already started. The dog is not psychic and they're like, I think a seizure is going to happen, but they can actually smell the changes happening in your body. Just like if someone had diabetes, the dog can sense those glucose levels changing in your body. So it's pretty amazing. We just have to explain to the dog what you're supposed to recognize. I want you to pay attention to this scent specifically, and I want you to tell me, and I want you to be excited about it because I want you to wake me up, interrupt me if I'm watching my favorite television program to get my attention, because this is really, really important. So animals that have the good sense of smell, they can detect seizures without any active training. What we do is we're actively training them to recognize this and tell us in a very specific way. But dogs that are able to alert naturally means that they've just recognized over time that there is this scent in the air that occurs before something very stressful happens for me. And so the dog starts to exhibit stress behavior. So it could be things like yawning, or licking its paws 20 minutes before you have a seizure. And you may not put two and two together because that's pretty random and it may not catch your attention. But a dog could also do a stress behavior like barking or whining or crawling up in your lap and like holding on to you or staring at you like this for 20 minutes. So pretty soon you'd start to recognize, hey, my dog does this every time before I have a seizure, and it's pretty consistent. The timing is pretty consistent, and then you'd be able to prepare yourself. The problem lies where you have to have a lot of different factors set up for a dog to naturally alert to seizures. If your dog is not doing that for you, it's not because they don't care about you. It could be that you don't have seizure activity in advance anyway. But if you do have seizure activity in advance, we need a few other factors to fall into place. We need a dog that is naturally anxious or stressed by personality and demeanor. So that dog is going to care that a stressful event happens. You also have to have seizures that are stressful by nature. So if they're tonic-clonic seizures or grand mal seizures, that's going to be pretty stressful to a dog. If you only have absent seizures where you're just kind of, that might be the seizure for you, might be staring straight ahead, that's not going to be stressful to a dog. So if you have lots of different types of seizures, that's not going to be consistent to the dog, and if they're not mostly stressful, that's not going to be consistent to the dog either. So we need all these things already to fall into place for the dog to be able to be stressed about this event that's going to happen. If the scent were available and then you had an absent seizure, the dog would never care. They just wouldn't. So we have to get down deeper and explain to the dog what they're supposed to be looking for. So what we do is we will get a scent sample from the recipient that's going to be getting the dog, or if someone were self-training their dog, they would collect a scent sample at some point. And the scent sample is where if the person is having the seizure, we take some clean gauze and we swab the inside of the mouth and the palms of their hands, and we're collecting scent from that person. And then what we're going to do is we are going to have that scent available to the dog in the same room at the same time that we play the alert game. The alert game is just a way to communicate to a dog, I want you to paw at my leg, and you're going to get a jackpot of treats. Paw at my leg right now? Okay, good. Here's your jackpot of treats. They love this game, obviously, because it's really fun. But what we need to do now is to pair the scent sample with that alert game. So we have it available. We don't put the scent right down into the dog's nose and say, get this gauze, like it, okay, now paw my leg. We just have it randomly available in the room. We don't let the dog see us or hear us opening up the package that has the scent sample in it. And then we tell the dog to play the alert game. Pretty soon, we have that scent available in a room. The dog walks into it and they're like, oh, it's time to play the alert game. And they start pawing at our leg. So we don't have to tell them to do it anymore. And that's the great thing. So already the dog is starting to pick up on the fact that this scent means I'm supposed to be pawing at your leg. And then when we have the recipient and the dog paired together, we will say, okay, whenever you have a seizure, we're going to play the alert game with the dog again. Sometimes the first time that the dog meets the recipient, they start pawing at someone's leg, because guess what? The scent on that gauze was not just the scent of the seizure. It was also that person, the scent of that person, maybe even what they had that day for lunch. So there's a lot of different scents that the dogs are picking up on. And dogs don't just smell one scent. Like, I smell marinara sauce cooking. The dog smells the thyme and the oregano and the tomato and the garlic and can sort it out. Their sense of smell is incredible. The olfactory center in their brain is so much more developed than ours. So they can catch scents that we could never even dream of having. We don't smell different when we're about to have a seizure, but the dog smells that change in us. So we're cashing in on that and having the dog tell us about it in advance. So when the dog first meets that recipient, they're a little bit confused about what they're supposed to be alerting to. Not all dogs. Some of them get it the very first time that the recipient ever has a seizure in front of them, they're pawing at them 20 minutes in advance. We're like, oh, bonus. The dog's telling us already. But usually we have to do some reinforcement training, which means we have to have the recipient play the alert game with the dog after they have a seizure. For maybe, sometimes it's a couple seizures, sometimes it's going to be a week, a month of seizures, but it's usually very limited amount of time before the dog picks it up and they say, oh, that's the scent I'm supposed to be alerting for, that's what's going to get me that jackpot of treats. So before too long, the dog is alerting. We used to do alert training without the scent sample involved, and we would just have the recipient play the alert game with the dog after they had a seizure, or a family member would play the alert game with the dog while they're having the seizure. But it would take the dogs longer to figure it out, obviously, because we didn't have that repetition involved. So it might be like 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road before the dog finally figured it out. The very first dog that we started using scent training with figured it out after 2 seizures. So the dog figured it out in a week. So there's a huge difference between using scent training to purposefully train the dog to alert, as opposed to teaching them that the seizure is happening, this is how I want you to react. Now some of you may be asking, well, what if I don't know if I have seizure activity in advance? And a lot of times you're not going to know that. Sometimes you might have an EEG that's done, and you might sense, the EEG might be picking up some seizure activity before the breakthrough comes through. But we're not even going to be relying on that medical technology. What we're going to do is we're going to try to train the dog to alert to seizures in advance. If it can't alert in advance because you don't have that activity happening in advance, at least the dog can go tell someone else that you're having a seizure at the time. And that leads right into what Mary's going to tell you, because that's all about the scent training. Now she's going to tell you what the dogs can do after the seizure has started taking place. Mary? And after she's done, we're going to answer questions.
Okay, let's see if we can get her situated. Rosie, sit. That's all right. Well, thank you very much. So, as Katie said, we've gone past the alert phase, and unfortunately, the sad truth is that even though we can alert and we can detect and we can medicate, we have not found a way to stop seizures. They still happen, and until we find a cure for epilepsy, seizures are going to happen. And what we want is we want to keep the person having a seizure as safe as possible, and the service dog is another tool of doing that. So as she said, this is Rosie. I'm going to talk just a moment about the service dog piece of it. We kind of compare the service dog to Olympians. Not all people make it to the Olympics. Those that do, it comes with years of practice and dedication. Service dogs are the same. Not all dogs are made to be service dogs. Those that do, it comes with a lot of practice and hard work, as Katie said, and dedication. We start with our puppies when they're first born. The first year they go into a puppy raiser home. They raise them, teach them basic manners and public access. Then after they're about a year old, where we're a little unique than some is our dogs actually do their formal service dog training in the prison. We have 2 prisons in Lincoln, and we go in and we work with the inmates each week. We've had a lot of success with that. The gentlemen, at least in Lincoln, have an opportunity to have a paid position, or they can come and volunteer for us. So we know the guys in the program are doing it because they're dedicated to what we do and they love dogs. So the dogs, and we've had great success. So what I'm going to talk about today is an acronym called INCH. So the person's having the seizure. What we want to do first is the I, and that's identify that this is actually a seizure. We ask our recipients to actually videotape the seizure and send it to us. We know that's really difficult to do, however, we feel that's a critical piece. And if you just shake your head yes or no, have you ever seen a terror or fear seizure? If you haven't, the first time you see one, they're pretty daunting and can be overwhelming. So if you can imagine a little girl like this, and the first time she meets her person and they have a terror seizure, and the little person has their eyes open and everything that's coming out of their face and their voice is terror and fear, this dog hasn't been desensitized or introduced to that. They're like, I don't know what's going to get us, but I'm out of here. That is not a response we want our dogs to do. So we feel it's really important that we understand not only the type of seizures, but what they look like, so we can identify. The second piece is notify. So once it sees that you're having the seizure, we want them to notify somebody. There's a lot of tools out there. A couple of them we'll talk about is you have a phone that they can push the button if it's nearby. It'll call somebody, or 911, plus it'll send out an alert. Or you can strategically place a bell. They're really cheap, big buttons throughout your home or office. They can push that. Once again, it'll notify somebody in the area, hey, this person is having problems, we need you to come help. Once they, and let me back up just a second. Another time, unfortunately, people aren't always in their home and office. Sometimes they're in the park, the playground, school bathroom. places like that, and we don't have a device that we can notify. So sometimes what's helpful is if a dog will bark once. What that does, especially if you're in a public place, if you hear a dog bark, you're like, what was that? And it gets your attention to where the barking is, and you can see that we have a person that needs some help. So that's another way that they can notify. We had one of our clients was in the hospital, and while she was there, she had a grand mal, and her dog was with her, and the nurse didn't come in, so she went out, she left the room. She not only went out to find a nurse, but she found her nurse in another room with another patient and brought her back, because her person was more important. So these dogs are very, very amazing animals, and they do a lot to get you help. So now we've identified and notified. Next we're going to talk about the safety piece. Once the dog is notified to the best of its ability, we want them to turn all of their focus and attention on the person having the seizure. Once again, it depends on the type of seizure. You can categorize it, but they still are very unique to the person. So we've identified, we notified, now we see that this person's having the seizure. If it's something where you or the person vomits or maybe drools or foams, the dog can come and put them on their side and lay behind them and keep them on their side so that it actually has a way of draining and they don't choke. We have some people that actually get up, and so they want their dog to lay across their legs and keep them in one position. Some people want the head to rest somewhere. Just that light, constant touch can be very calming and reassuring to a person. There's others that just want the dog to lay beside them, and that's a possibility. We have had a patient, or not a patient, a client that in her, she would be picking at herself, and during the interview we actually saw her shoving her mom off the bench, and they said that was something that was very common. If there was someone around, that they would shove them. So we wanted to keep her and her dog safe, so what we did after the notifying piece, we had the dog sit 2 to 3 feet away and just stare, and as soon as that repetition stopped, then she would go to the person. So these dogs can do many different things. It just depends on what the individual needs. So after notifying and safety comes the commanding phase. After the active seizure, the postictal phase, it could be a second, it could be minutes, but the main thing is we want the dog to lay right there, right beside you, or right beside the person having the seizure until they're ready for the next phase, which is commanding. I might need my medicine, I might want my phone, go get me a drink of water, a pillow, a blanket. This is where it's safe for the dog to actually leave the person. They can go out, get whatever it is they need, and come back. So that's the commanding phase. Last but not least is the help me phase. That's when the person is ready to actually get up and move on and do something different. This is where the dog can actually brace, put their nose underneath them, get them to a standing up prone position. Once they're standing up, people can be weak, disoriented, depends on what size of the brain their seizure is from. It could be very weak on one side. The dog goes into a balance assist, and they actually can help them walk by counterbalancing or let them lean on them until they get to the next place they need to go. So that's the inch. It's identify, notify, safety, command, and help me. And in closing, I asked some of the clients what their dog did for them, and the words we got, and I asked them to do it in one word. They gave me life-changing, confidence, independence, peace of mind. I said, wait a minute, that's 3. It was a teacher. She said she gets to cheat once in a while as well, so I'm not going to argue with the teacher. But the question I think in the beginning was, can dogs really do that? And the answer is yes, they can do that, and I think they can do so much more, as Katie said, and yeah, they're amazing animals. And I think now we're ready for any questions or answers, or questions, and we'll provide the answer. So yes.
Do you train them to also do things like keep the person from walking too far, or staying on the street, or things like that?
You can, but that does take a lot of work on the person's part as well. One of the things that we do, and I'll let Katie respond as well, one of the things that we do is we'll say, let's go. And that's a command telling the dog that it's okay for me to go. And if I'm not hearing some type of a verbal cue, I know I need to stay in place, and I'm not going anywhere until you tell me it's okay to move. Did you want to add anything?
We don't train the dogs to like herd someone from walking into the street, but we do similar training to what they do, where the dog is trained to lay on their legs. Like with flight seizures, sometimes people get up and start walking into things, or like fall downstairs, walk into furniture, and it just keeps them stable. But we don't train to keep them out of streets, but a lot of organizations do.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have
dog, that just Cocker Spaniel, who is naturally sometimes sensitive to me. Inconsistent, hit and miss. Is there a way that I can help him?
Yeah, so you probably would want to intentionally train him to alert, because sometimes he's nervous and sometimes he isn't. It might have to do with maybe even how you're interacting with the dog that day, or it might just be the day and that dog's having a different day. It could also be the different type of seizures that you have. We have seen that some of our dogs will, we purposefully will train them to alert to tonic-clonics but ignore absent seizures, because it's more important for the tonic-clonics. And they don't want to be woken up all night long if they're going to have an absent seizure. So we have seen, I can't say that all dogs are able to detect different scents, or that even every person puts out a different scent for different types of seizures, but I can say that I have seen it happen before, so it's possible. So it might be why he's responding differently. I would recommend that you intentionally would train your own dog to do it. We have it's a very detailed process. I went over it real basically, just explaining, like, we teach the dog to paw us, and then we give them a treat, and then we put the scent together with the treat, and then have them paw us after we have a seizure. But there's a lot more detail in our books. We have books on our website. If you want some more information, you can come by our table in there. So we do advocate and help people to self-train. But a lot of dogs, especially if you have one already, it may not be suited for public access, because not all dogs are comfortable in public, and it can be a liability for people and for you. But at least they could help you within the home.
But I'm home by myself all day, so it'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you can learn how to train the dog to go and dial one of these special phones for you too, and to help you in other ways. Yeah.
So I have a 13-year-old son, and I've been really looking into getting a dog for him. He's nonverbal, and he wakes up a lot through the night, and can get himself out of his bed and kind of wander. And now I'm not sure what is waking him up, because he's nonverbal. Doesn't have a really good awareness of his surrounding, and I think he has a lot of sensory processing issues. And I've thought of, if we had a dog, to have the dog actually sort of lying on him or with him, like something for him to be touching. Because often when I go crawl into bed with him and just kind of cozy up to him, he goes back to sleep. And I'm not sure what's waking him up. So that's where the whole seizure component of it maybe comes into play. Maybe it's a seizure, or maybe it's just a lot of neurological activity. Something is waking him up. But
Can I ask how much he weighs?
110 pounds.
So what we train the dogs to perform deep pressure therapy, so like they're laying on top of your lap to help you feel comfortable and all of that. And we would do that with people that would weigh more, but really young children, we train them never to lay on top of the person ever, because if it's a really small child and they're having a seizure and the dog's like, I'm going to comfort you and make you feel better and lay on top of you, which would impede their breathing, it could actually be really dangerous. So that's on a case-by-case basis, but you could at least train the dog to lay next to him in bed. And depending on his weight, that's something I would actually talk to your doctor about, based on his medical history and how he's able to breathe. If they think that a dog laying on top of him would impede that. You could also get a smaller dog.
Well, he's 13, so he's like
bigger.
40 pounds bigger, more than he was a year and a half ago. So he's not going to stay 110 for very long.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did you want to add?
I think that's the same thing. I was thinking laying beside, and it would really be beneficial if the bed was up against the wall, so there was only one way to go, and then they could lay on the outside and bring him the pressure and the comfort. Then what you could do is jump into the notify. If he did get out of bed, that the dog would notify you that, hey, he's up and out, and maybe we need to do something here. So I'm not sure.
And in cases like mine, when it's a nonverbal child and the parents, really the parent, you're also training as part of it. Right?
I think in all situations you're training family, and yes, it's a team effort. I mean, it's the person that's actually going to command the dog, but it's never just the person that needs the training.
Well, he would be.
one more question because we are out of time.
We're so out of time. But you know what?
Maybe
You guys,
one more question.
Yeah, and you can
there's
come
probably
to our booth.
Exactly. I know you guys all have questions, and they'll be here all day at their booth. So definitely go see Katie at Little Angels and Michelle at.
I'm Mary.
Mary, who's Michelle?
Michelle is back at the booth.
Sorry, Mary at the.